Hi, gang. Donnie G. Let's talk sports. Got
Do we have to?
Show. Would you let me finish this? I rehearsed this all day. Okay. We've got a pretty good show. I think we've got the A team here tonight, but we're not going to be taking any trivia. So if you want to talk baseball, we'll take your calls. But we're not going to do any trivia because we got too much to talk about, and we've got a lot of talent at this desk. On my right is one of the legendary Philadelphia sports writers, sportscasters. Excuse me.
Old.
No, but you're a legend. I'm telling you. At the far end, we have one of the great writers of the Western world, the Portuguese prince, Mr. Doug Fernandez. Next to him is
you have to have an albatross somewhere.
Next to him is the mouth that roared, and he was the greatest. And you just fill in the blanks, okay? And next to me is one of the greatest catchers of all time, with a distinguished broadcasting career. Let's just say a nice Sarasota welcome to Joe Gargiola.
His predecessor.
Junior or senior?
Yeah, that's right.
You and your
Tim McCarver, I appreciate your annual trek here. And
Sure, thanks.
it's always something we look forward to. We're going to talk a lot of baseball. I want to talk a little bit of the boys were up at the NC tournament, and but you've got a new book out, and I just want you to talk a few minutes. It's called Tim McCarver's Diamond Gems. Mike, can you come in on that? This is what, your third or fourth book, Tim? Fifth.
Yeah. This is different. I've got a television show, a national television show, and this is a compilation of 70 stories from the guys on the show. Guys like Ernie Banks and Willie Mays and Henry Aaron, Don Zimmer.
Couldn't get any big names on it.
Sandy Koufax. No, it's. I think it's a good book because it's not about these players, but it's stuff that's from these players, and it's their stories. As an example, Don was talking in the green room 15 minutes ago about Don Zimmer giving himself credit for winning the 7th game of the 1955 World Series, and kiddingly, of course.
Tongue in cheek.
Yeah, because he had started that game. Junior Gilliam had played left field.
That is correct.
And in the 6th inning, Zimmer was pinch hit for. Gilliam moved to second base. Amoros became the left fielder, and it had to be a left-handed throwing left fielder because he's the one who made the catch on Yogi Berra's famous fly ball. Johnny Padres wins 2-0 and
changed the game.
And the Dodgers, well, that was Game 7 of the World Series.
That won the game.
That was it. That won the game.
And
I think it was the
Brooklyn,
8th inning, right? The catch was the
Brooklyn's only World Series.
Brooklyn's only World Series. So.
Yep.
I mean, it's stuff like that makes it.
How do you prepare when you've got? I've watched your show many times, and when you've got an Ernie Banks or a Willie Mays coming on, I mean, what you want them to be relaxed? You want to hear what they say, but
I'm prepared to listen.
That's the answer.
The other thing too.
That to me is what makes a good interview.
Yeah.
Is listening.
Absolutely. The other thing that Timmy and I talked about on the radio a couple of days ago was the fact that George Will does the forward. And for those folks that are writing aficionados who like George Will, he's a great baseball man, number one, and he did a great job, I thought, for you, Timmy, in the forward.
He did it in 2 hours.
Yeah, you told me.
He wrote that article in 2 hours in the morning. We had talked, my people had talked to him and asked he said, I'd be happy to. And 2 hours later, he had the story written.
I tell you what, if we went to school together, I would be sitting next to him in any major exam. The man is a smart man.
He's a smart man.
But you've also got some other lightweights in the back. You've got Bob Costas, you've got Frank DeFord, a great writer, Mr. Alan H. Bud Selig, Joe Gargiola, Sr. So, I mean, I hate to name drop, but in fact, I was talking to Liz Taylor the Pope about that this morning.
Drop.
Yeah.
That's how you sell books. Come on, name drop.
My aunt, when she was
I'm still
head of writers for Sports Illustrated, she hired Frank DeFord when he first came out of school at Sports Illustrated. She was there when they started the magazine, and she hired Frank DeFord. She was one.
It's a fun book. I mean, a guy like Lou Piniella, you have no idea what you're going to get with Lou. Lou's wonderful, and he was on the show, and he told me that the reason that he signed a professional baseball contract was that he failed square dancing in college. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, he stayed up all night to study for a biology exam, And because of that, he missed his square dancing class the next day. He flunked square dancing, and he decided after that college was not for him. He still lacks one semester of finishing his college education, so he signed his professional baseball contract. So failing square dancing, and Lou is now the manager of the Chicago Cubs.
Fernando's, you didn't pass the bunny hop. Remember the bunny hop over in New Bedford?
I would suggest to all of you to read it. It's got great stories, and
Thank you.
Here's the other thing. We're going to be the gang right here. When we leave here, we're going over to Patrick's. And
Where's that again?
Patrick's, and we're going to be there for a while. If you want an autographed copy of the book, which way I'm going? They can see it.
all right there.
Signed by Tim. If you'd like to buy the book, we'll be over there. And I asked him if he would bring a couple extra ones, so you know where we'll be. And
Be happy
if
to
you,
do that. Thank you.
So we're pulling a Dickie Vitale here, right?
a little bit more subtle, okay?
And he's going to sign it in chicken wing sauce, right?
Oh, geez, there was a mistake.
Tim,
Okay.
what's your most interesting story of all the stories you have in the book? What hit you? Maybe even something you didn't know about.
I think the Bob Uecker. That's a good question. I think the Bob Uecker playing the tuba before the first game of the 1964 World Series. Bob said that the Cardinals made a big move because we didn't win it. We had a better team in 1963 than we did in 1964, but because the Phillies collapsed,
Do I remember that?
we won it on the last day of the season. But at one time in September in 1963, we won 19 out of 20. So Uecker says that we almost won it in 1963, but the piece that was missing was him. So in 1964, before spring training, we traded for Uecker. Well, and Bob didn't play a lot. I became the #1 catcher in the middle of June at 63. So we needed a backup, and Bob and I roomed together. You know, we paid $12 a night at the Bel Air East in St. Louis to room, $24 between the two of us. Anyway, Bob had his family in Milwaukee. I was single at the time, and before the first game of the World Series, Uecker says in the book that he took his extra hitting at 7:30 in the morning, which is not true, but it's Uecker. Well, anyway, so he didn't need to hit. Johnny Keane said, "You're not playing anyway, so to protect the band in left field." So he's out there with his mitt protecting the band, and they took a break, and he thought, well, it might be a good idea. So he goes over, gets the tuba, puts the tuba around his neck, and starts shagging flies with the tuba. The balls were bouncing all over the tuba. He'd catch it, running after it. It was hilarious. The fans loved it, the whole bit. Playing the vaunted Yankees now. This is before the World Series. Well, anyway, Bob Howsam was the general manager. Bing Devine had been fired as the general manager 2 months before, and Branch Rickey's guy was Bob Howsam. And Bob Howsam sent, the Rickey people were tight. They did not pay a lot of money.
Didn't spend money.
And Howsam was no exception. And Howsam sent him a bill for $250 for tuba repair. Took it out of his World Series money, and we only made $8,600 for beating the Yankees that year. So you received $8,350. Took $250. That's my favorite story. But there are a lot of other good. Or the fact that Henry Aaron wanted to just get his pension in. That when Henry Aaron came to the big leagues, he wanted 5 years to get his pension in, and 23 years later, he hit more home runs than anybody in the history of the game until.
Well, it's funny. We were at McKechnie the other night, that first night game at McKechnie, and Yogi's there. So when I talked to him for about 15 minutes, I said, "Yogi, I really feel badly because I said Zip came right out during that race thing, and you stayed in the dugout." I said, "If you two guys had come out together, that would have been the oldest fight in the history of America."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yogi said, "I don't leave the dugout."
I was at a Reds game when the Reds played the Yankees a couple of weeks ago. I was behind the home plate watching batting practice behind the batting cage, and standing next to me over here is Johnny Bench. 4 feet over is Yogi Berra. And I'm like, where's the photographer when you need it?
Two pretty good catchers.
Two pretty good catchers within like 3 or 4 feet of each other.
Johnny Bench is in here, and Johnny Bench, after the first World Championship, I think it was 1975. He goes home to Binger, Oklahoma, and they have a parade. Binger, Oklahoma's got a few people. They have a parade. Nobody was at the parade. You know why? Everybody was in it. Nobody was at the parade, and I mean, isn't that wonderful? You can see Binger, Oklahoma, in late October of 1965, and Johnny Bench waving everybody, and nobody's there because everybody's in the parade.
You know, Tim,
great stories.
You talk about the Phillies' collapse in '64, but people don't realize. I think you guys went 9-1 the last 10 games. I mean, it wasn't just the Phillies' collapse. You guys basically
we lost 2.
That was a 3-team race, though.
Yeah,
It was a 3-team
We
race.
lost 2 out of 3 to the Mets.
Right.
Yeah.
We beat the Pirates 5 in a row. We beat the Phillies 3 straight, and then we lost 2 in a row to the Mets, and so we went 9-2.
Right.
The last, and we go into Pittsburgh with 10 days left to play. We miss Bob Veal and Bob Friend, and Dick Groat said that's the way we can sweep this team. Is to miss Friend and Veal. Veal had a sore shoulder, and Bob Friend was staring 20 losses, and Groat said he doesn't want to lose 20, so he'll only start one more time, and that sure enough he did, and we swept him, and that gave us a chance.
I'd like to know the mindset of somebody that steals home with 2 strikes on Frank Robinson at the plate. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
2 strikes on Frank Robinson. This is
Chico Ruiz.
This is a deciding.
Chico Reese?
It was Chico Ruiz.
Chico Ruiz. He
Yeah.
stole home.
1-0.
Frank's got 2 strikes on
In the
him.
14th inning,
Yeah.
they won 1 and 1.
That was the crusher.
I want to ask Tim this because I got to spend a few minutes with Johnny Bench and ask him, who was the first guy to catch one-handed? Was it him or Hundley?
It was Randy.
It was Hundley?
Yeah.
Because
Hundley
Johnny
was
likes to
before
take...
Jim.
Okay, yeah.
Well, Johnny,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who exactly was first.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, they both came along at the same time.
Right.
Hundley was a couple of years earlier. I think Randy's first year was 66. Johnny came in 68.
Right.
But both were superb catchers. But the break in the mid
Right.
allowed
it?
them to do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Tim, you caught arguably the 2 most feared pitchers from each side of the plate. No one wanted to see Carlton's slider, and Bob Gibson was just a beast.
Yeah.
How?
Tough guy.
But different mentalities, weren't they? I mean, Gibson would probably fight his mother if he was up there, but Carlton seemed more businesslike. What was it like?
No, Lefty had a streak in him also. Steve learned. We've talked about this before. Steve learned a lot from Gibson. He learned that the mound was his office, and nobody. When Pete Rose was the guy who would, if he'd make an out, he'd go over the pitcher's mound. He'd go over the back of the pitcher's mound, and the reason he did that, he would intimidate young pitchers. Nobody went over the back of the pitcher's mound when Gibson was out there. Nobody.
Be a fist fight?
Nobody. He knocked Pete down one night. Pete got up and spit at him. The next pitch was right here. Pete didn't spit anymore.
Tell the story about when you went out to the mound and talked to him. That's even a better story.
That's a legendary
Let's hear
story.
this one.
When I went out, and he said, "Get on back behind the mound. Get on back behind the plate. The only thing you know about pitching said it's hard to hit." That's
Thank
an
you very
old
much,
story.
Ray.
Yeah. But he was a tough guy, toughest friend that I ever had to make, toughest competitor that I've ever seen, best athlete I've ever seen, and he's one of my closest friends now.
Was there
I'd do anything for him?
Was there a better pitcher than his year in 1968?
No. Koufax had some great years from 61 through 66. Best 6 years of any pitcher ever, but nobody had what Gibson did. Gibson went through a 95-inning stretch in 1968. He gave up 2 runs, one of which was earned.